I'd paid the exact $2,400 property tax bill so my dad would not lose his pride. I sat at the table with the cheap-ass flowers, the cheap ones Vance bought Mom just 15 minutes ago. I'd even smiled when she put them in glass. Nobody thanked me. Nobody cared. Dinner was halfway through when my father looked across the table, gave a flat smile, and said it. "You're just our rock. You don't need applause." My older brother Vance grinned. Not an appreciative grin, a smug one. The world truly needs dreamers to build the future. My mother sighed at my career. I set my fork down, swallowed the dry meat, pushed back my chair, took my purse from the hook by the door, and I left. No argument, no tears, no slamming, just the soft click of the front door behind me. But here's what none of them knew. I'd just found out they forged my name for a $65,000 loan, and what happened in the days after that dinner would ruin their lives. I'm Harper, 32, the logistics director from Grand Rapids. This is the story of how my family stole my identity to buy oak cabinets. Just drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. I am standing in a room with no skin. Yellow fiberglass insulation pokes out from between the wooden studs of the walls. The floor is stripped down to the raw plywood, covered in a thick layer of white drywall dust. Wires hang from the ceiling like dead vines. There is a cold, sharp November wind blowing in through a window frame that is covered only by a sheet of heavy plastic. It flaps loudly in the quiet house. This used to be my childhood kitchen in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Now it is a graveyard of oak cabinets and broken tiles. I let the contractors tear it all apart just hours ago. Then I told them to stop, pack up their tools and leave. As a supply chain director for Nexus Freight Logistics, my entire life is about tracking things. I manage shipping routes from China to Chicago. I know exactly where a single container of car parts is at any minute of the day. If a truck gets a flat tire in Ohio, my phone buzzes before the driver even pulls over. I am paid to see problems before they happen. I am paid to fix broken systems. But for 32 years I could not see the broken system inside my own family. I tracked millions of dollars for my company, but I completely missed the robbery happening right at my own dinner table. To understand how a family gets to the point of tearing a house apart, you have to understand how we looked when the house was whole. If you saw us at church on Fulton Street, or at the neighborhood block parties, you would think we were the perfect picture of an American family. My father, Richard, was a retired loan officer for a local credit union. He wore neatly ironed shirts, shook everyone's hand with a firm grip, and always gave financial advice to the neighbors. People respected him. He was the kind of man who served on the community board and organized charity drives. My mother, Eleanor, baked pies for the school bake sales. She cared about what the neighbors thought, more than she cared about almost anything else. And then there was my older brother, Vance. Vance was 35 years old, but in my parents' eyes he was always a bright, shining boy who just needed one more chance to change the world. Vance did not have a regular job. He was always starting a new company. One year it was an app for dog walkers. The next year it was a company selling expensive water bottles. None of them ever worked, but to my parents he was a genius who was just misunderstood by the world. I remember a Sunday dinner 2 years ago. It was September. We were sitting at the old oak table that used to be right over there, where the floorboards are ripped up. Vance had shown up 45 minutes late. He drove a leased silver Audi that he could not afford. He walked in holding a cheap $5 bouquet of flowers from the gas station, and my mother cried as if he had handed her diamonds. "Oh, Vance, you shouldn't have," my mother said, rushing to put them in her best glass vase. "Only the best for you, Mom," Vance smiled, taking the largest piece of roast beef from the platter before anyone else had even sat down. I sat quietly at the end of the table. Earlier that week, I had secretly paid the $2,400 property tax bill for this house because my father said his pension check was a little tight that month. My mother did not know about the taxes. My father liked to keep his financial struggles a secret from her to protect his pride as the head of the house. I paid it without asking questions, just like I always did. I didn't bring flowers, I just brought a checkbook. During dinner, my father raised his glass of iced tea to Vance. "So son, tell us about the new business plan. I was telling the guys at the golf course about your ideas." "It is scaling up nicely, Dad," Vance said, using big business words that didn't actually mean anything. "We are just looking for seed money right now. It takes money to make money, you know. The banks are just too slow to understand my vision." My father nodded slowly, his face full of pride. "The banks only understand safe bets. They don't understand visionaries. You keep pushing, son." Then, my father looked down the table at me. His smile faded just a little bit, turning into a polite, flat line. "And how is the warehouse, Harper? Still moving boxes?" We just secured a major contract with a medical supply company, Dad, I said softly, looking down at my plate. It's a big step for my career. My mother sighed, waving her hand. That sounds very nice, Harper, but it sounds so exhausting. Always working, working, working. I just wish you had a little more of your brother's spark. You're so serious all the time. I didn't argue. I just kept eating my food. I swallowed the lump in my throat along with the dry meat. After dinner, while my mother was washing dishes and Vance was outside on his phone, my father pulled me aside into the hallway. He placed a heavy, warm hand on my shoulder. He looked at me with those kind, respectable eyes that made everyone trust him. Harper, he said in a low, gentle voice, your mother and I really appreciate you helping with the taxes this month. You have to understand, Vance is a dreamer. The world needs dreamers to build the future. But families need rocks. You are our rock, sweetie. You are the steady ground we stand on. You don't need the applause like he does. You are stronger than that. You understand, don't you? He squeezed my shoulder. It felt like love. It sounded like love. So I nodded. I understand, Dad, I whispered. I accepted it. I was the rock. Rocks don't get celebrated. They just get stepped on so other people can climb higher. I believed that if I just worked hard enough, paid enough bills, and stayed quiet enough, I would earn my place. I thought I was keeping the peace. I thought I was doing the right thing. I didn't know that being their rock was exactly what would make me so easy to crush. I traced my finger over a deep, rough scratch in the exposed wood of the kitchen wall. It takes a lot of heavy tools and loud force to rip a physical house apart. But it takes a very quiet kind of force to break a family. The break did not happen today in this dusty room. It started exactly 3 days ago. Tuesday, November 24th, 2026. I was sitting in my glass office at the Nexus Freight building in downtown Grand Rapids. It was raining outside. Drops of water were racing down the large windows. My computer screen was filled with bright green and red rows of numbers, tracking shipping containers crossing the Pacific Ocean. I was holding a warm cup of black coffee. Everything was normal. Everything was under control. Then, my personal cell phone buzzed on the desk. It was a notification from my credit card monitoring app. Usually I ignore these alerts. They are mostly just monthly updates. But my whole job is built on checking details, so I picked up the phone and opened the message. The screen loaded with a bright red warning symbol. New account added to your credit report. I frowned. I had not opened a new credit card. I had not bought a new car. I tapped the alert to see the details. The page slowly loaded. Lender, Grand Rapids First Credit Union. Account type, personal home improvement loan. Amount, $65,000. Status, approved and funded. I froze. My coffee cup stopped halfway to my mouth. I thought it was a mistake. I thought some hacker in another country had stolen my identity. The credit union was the exact same bank where my father worked for 30 years before he retired. I quickly dialed the customer service number. A woman named Brenda answered. I gave her my name, my date of birth, and my address. Yes, Ms. Harper, Brenda said in a cheerful voice. I see the loan right here. The $65,000 was approved last Friday. The funds were transferred on Monday morning. Transferred where? I asked. My voice sounded thin and strange. I didn't open this loan. I don't have an account with your bank. The funds went to the joint checking account listed on the file, Brenda explained, typing on her keyboard. The account shared with your brother Vance. All the air left my office. The room was heated, but my hands turned freezing cold. My stomach dropped like I was falling from a great height. Can you email me the loan documents? I asked quietly. Of course. Sending them now as a secure PDF, Brenda said. 5 minutes later, I opened the file on my computer monitor. I stared at the bright white screen. There was my full name, there was my home address, there was my social security number, and at the bottom of the 4th page, on the line for the borrower, was my signature. But it was not my handwriting. My handwriting is small, round, and neat. The signature on the screen was messy. The letter H had a sharp, aggressive slant. The P leaned too far to the right. I knew that handwriting. I had seen it on cheap birthday cards and failed business plans for my entire life. It was Vance's handwriting. I sat back in my office chair. The rain kept hitting the window. Vance forged my signature. He stole $65,000 using my name. But a cold, hard thought hit my brain. Vance did not know my social security number. We never lived together as adults. I kept my financial life completely locked away. I never left mail at my parents' house. There was only one person in the world who had my private information. My father. 3 weeks ago, on a Sunday evening, my father called me. He sounded perfectly normal. He told me he was updating his life insurance policy. He said he needed to verify my social security number to make sure I was listed correctly as a beneficiary. I gave it to him over the phone without a single second of doubt. He was my dad. Why would I doubt my own father? I looked at the bank logo on the PDF document. Grand Rapids First Credit Union. My father still played golf with the branch manager. He still went to their holiday parties. He knew exactly how to bypass the security phone calls. He knew how to push paperwork through without raising any red flags. My father did not just know about the forgery. He gave Vance the key to my life. He helped his son steal my credit. I did not scream. I did not throw my coffee cup at the wall. I felt a deep, dark sickness in my stomach. I walked out of my office, went to the company restroom, and locked the door. I looked at myself in the mirror over the sink. I expected to see a woman crying, but my eyes were dry. The sadness was instantly burned away by a quiet, calculating anger. The rock they relied on was finally cracking. I did not call the police right away. In supply chain management, when you find a massive system failure, you do not just panic. You gather all the data first. You build an unbreakable case. I went back to my desk. I printed the loan documents. I took a red pen and circled the forged signature. I printed out the phone records showing the exact date and time my father called me to ask for my social security number. I put everything into a thick brown folder and placed it in my briefcase. Thursday was Thanksgiving, just 2 days away. I knew my parents were hosting dinner. I knew Vance would be there. I decided I was going to go. I needed to sit at their table. I needed to look them in the eyes and watch them eat. I needed to see if they felt even a single drop of guilt. On Thursday afternoon, the sky was dark gray. It was freezing outside. I parked my car on my parents' street. Vance's leased silver Audi was already parked in the driveway. I walked up the concrete steps and opened the front door. The house smelled like roasted turkey, warm butter, and cinnamon. It smelled like every happy holiday memory I ever had, but it all felt like a lie now. I walked into the hallway and stopped. Stacked against the living room wall were 10 massive, heavy cardboard boxes. Printed on the side of the boxes were the words, "Premium Oak Kitchen Cabinets." My mother walked out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron. Her face lit up with a huge smile. "Harper, you made it," she said, coming over to hug me. I let her hug me. I felt nothing. "What are all these boxes, Mom?" I asked, looking at the wood piled in the hallway. She smiled, her eyes shining with tears of pure pride. "Oh, honey, it's a surprise. Come into the dining room. Your brother has something amazing to tell you." I held my purse tightly against my side. Inside the purse was the brown folder. I took a slow, deep breath and walked into the dining room to face the people who sold me out. I walked into the dining room. The table was set with my mother's best china, the plates with the little blue flowers she only brought out once a year. The crystal glasses sparkled under the warm yellow light of the ceiling chandelier. My Aunt Clara and Uncle Thomas were already sitting at the table. Aunt Clara was my father's younger sister. She wore a heavy gold necklace and smelled strongly of lavender perfume. Uncle Thomas, her husband, was a retired real estate appraiser with a loud laugh and a habit of always agreeing with my father. Vance was standing near the head of the table, leaning against the back of an empty chair. He was holding a glass of red wine, smiling like he had just won a gold medal. "Harper, look who decided to grace us with her presence," Vance said, raising his glass toward me. "Hello, Vance," I said evenly. I pulled out my chair at the far end of the table and sat down. My mother hurried in from the kitchen, carrying the massive roasted turkey on a silver platter. She placed it in the center of the table and took her seat next to my father. She tapped her metal spoon against her water glass. Clink, clink, clink. "Before we eat, everyone, Vance has a very special announcement," my mother said. Her voice was shaking with excitement. Vance took a slow sip of his wine. He looked around the table, making sure everyone was watching him. "As you probably noticed in the hallway, there are a lot of large boxes. I wanted to give Mom and Dad a real Thanksgiving gift this year, so I am paying to completely remodel their kitchen. Custom oak cabinets, black marble countertops, new stainless steel appliances, the whole package. It's a $65,000 project. The contractors start demolition on Monday morning." Aunt Clara gasped and put her hand over her heart. "Oh, Vance, that is so incredibly generous. Richard, Eleanor, you must be so proud of your boy." My father puffed out his chest and smiled warmly. "We are, Clara. We really are. He's had a fantastic quarter with his new consulting firm. Hard work pays off." I looked directly at my father. He did not look at me. His eyes darted to the turkey, then to his water glass, then to Uncle Thomas. He took a long, quick drink of his water. Aunt Clara leaned across the table and looked at me. See, Harper? Your brother finally hit it big. Why can't you do something nice like this for your parents? You make good money at that shipping warehouse of yours. It would be nice if you pitched in too. I felt a sharp, heavy pain in my chest, but I did not let it show on my face. I looked at Aunt Clara. She knew Vance had been unemployed for 6 months. She knew my parents struggled to pay their bills, but she chose to believe the lie because it made the family look perfect to the outside world. She clapped for the show, no matter how fake the actors were. That is incredibly generous, Vance, I said. My voice was completely flat and calm. How did you secure the funding? $65,000 is a lot of cash to drop all at once. My father dropped his salad fork. It hit his china plate with a loud, sharp crack. Vance laughed, swirling the dark wine in his glass. I have excellent credit, Harper. The bank practically begged me to take a personal home improvement loan. Grand Rapids First Credit Union. Dad's old buddies took great care of me. I reached out and picked up my water glass. I took a slow sip. Grand Rapids First. That is a great bank. They are very strict about their paperwork, though. They require a lot of identity verification. My father cleared his throat loudly. His face was turning slightly red. Well, let's just eat before the food gets cold. Thomas, would you like to carve the turkey? Uncle Thomas chuckled, picking up the large carving knife. Family helping family. That's how it should be. Richard told me you helped Vance push the paperwork through, eh, Richard? Used your old bank connections? My father shot Thomas a very sharp, angry look. I just made a simple phone call, Thomas. The boy did the rest. Now please, cut the meat. I sat perfectly still and watched them. I watched the entire machine work. My father used his inside influence to push the forged loan through. Uncle Thomas knew my father bent the rules, but he thought it was just a father helping a son. He didn't know they used my name, or maybe he just didn't care to ask. They all protected Vance. They all built a wall around him, and they used my money and my future as the bricks. The rest of the dinner was a blur. I ate the turkey. I ate the mashed potatoes. I listened to Vance brag about the custom brass handles he picked out for the new cabinets. I listened to my mother tell Aunt Clara how Vance was the most thoughtful son in all of Michigan. I didn't scream. I didn't flip the table. Crying is an emotional reaction. I needed a professional strategy. In my job, when a supplier steals from us, we don't argue with them. We cut off their access. We cancel their contracts. We freeze their accounts. You don't fight a thief with feelings. You fight them with paperwork and legal boundaries. I left the house at 8:30 p.m. I did not hug Vance. I kissed my mother on the cheek. I shook my father's hand. His palm was damp with sweat, and his grip was weak. He finally looked me in the eyes, and for one tiny second I saw real fear. He knew I was too smart not to figure it out eventually. He just hoped I would stay quiet to keep the peace. I walked out into the freezing November air. The wind whipped my hair across my face. I got into my car and turned the heater on full blast. I sat in the dark driveway for a moment, looking at the glowing windows of the house. I reached into my purse and pulled out the thick brown folder. I looked at the forged signature on the printed pages again. Then, I pulled out my phone and searched the name printed on the side of the cabinet boxes sitting in their hallway. Lakeside Builders, Grand Rapids, MI. The contractors were scheduled to start demolition on Monday morning. I had exactly 3 days to burn Vance's little project to the ground. I put my car in reverse and drove away into the dark. I did not sleep on Thursday night. I sat on the couch in my dark apartment, watching the streetlights shine through the window. I felt completely empty. For 32 years I thought I had a family. I thought my father's quiet smiles and my mother's home-cooked meals were real love. But love does not steal your identity. Love does not put a rope around your neck so someone else can climb higher. The next morning was Friday, November 27th, the day after Thanksgiving. The stores in Grand Rapids were packed with people buying discounted televisions and toys. I was not going shopping. I was going to war. But in my line of work, you do not go to war alone. You need an expert. At 9 a.m., I drove to a small coffee shop near the courthouse to meet Sloan. Sloan was the senior legal counsel at my logistics company. She was 55 years old, wore sharp gray suits, and had eyes that missed absolutely nothing. Over the last 5 years, Sloan had become more than just a coworker. She was my mentor. When I was passed over for a promotion because I was too quiet, Sloan taught me how to speak up. When I was sick with the flu last winter, and my mother did not even call, Sloan brought hot soup to my door. Blood makes you related, but loyalty makes you family. Sloan was my chosen family. I sat across from her in the noisy coffee shop and placed the thick brown folder on the table. Look at this, Sloan, I said. My voice was tired. Sloan opened the folder. She read the bank loan documents. She looked at the forged signature. She read the printed phone records showing my father's call. She did not gasp or act shocked. She just analyzed the data, like a true professional. "Your brother is a criminal, Harper," Sloane said softly, looking me in the eyes. "And your father is an accessory to bank fraud. If you do not report this, you are legally accepting the debt. The credit union will come after your wages. They will ruin your credit score. You will not be able to buy a house, rent an apartment, or even get a car loan for the next 10 years. I looked down at my hands. If I report it, my brother could go to jail. My father could lose his pension. Sloane reached across the table and held my hand. Her grip was strong and warm. "Harper, listen to me. They did not care about your future when they signed your name on that paper. They threw you under a bus to pay for some wooden cabinets. You are not destroying your family. They destroyed it themselves. You are just refusing to pay for the damage." A heavy weight lifted off my chest. She was right. I had spent my whole life being the quiet rock, letting them step all over me. It was time to move the rock. At 11:30 a.m., I walked into the Grand Rapids Police Department on Monroe Center Street. The building smelled like wet boots and old floor wax. I sat in a hard plastic chair across from a tired-looking detective named Officer Briggs. "How can I help you, ma'am?" he asked, typing on his computer. "I need to report a case of identity theft and bank fraud," I said. I handed him the brown folder. "The total amount is $65,000. The thief is my brother Vance, and he had help from an insider." Officer Briggs stopped typing. He opened the folder. He looked at the documents for a long time. Then, he looked up at me. "Are you absolutely sure you want to press charges against your own blood relative? Once this is in the system, you cannot take it back." "I am sure," I said clearly. I did not cry. I felt a strange sense of peace. The fake mask of my family was finally falling off. Officer Briggs printed a report. It was police report number 26-8840. He stamped it with a red seal. At 1 p.m., I drove directly to the main branch of the Grand Rapids First Credit Union. I did not go to a regular teller. I asked to speak to the branch manager, a man named Mr. Peterson. He was the same man who played golf with my father. I sat in his nice office. He smiled widely at me. "Harper, how is your dad?" "Great guy, Richard. We always love seeing him around here." I did not smile back. I placed the stamped police report and the forged loan documents on his wooden desk. "An unsecured signature loan for $65,000 triggers an automatic system review, Mr. Peterson," I said, keeping my voice very professional and flat. "The only way it clears without me sitting in this chair is if a branch manager manually overrides the security protocol by falsely categorizing me as a verified Tier 1 corporate client. This loan was opened using my name without my permission. My signature was forged by my brother. I have filed a police report for felony fraud. I am officially notifying your bank that this is a fraudulent account." Mr. Peterson's face turned completely white. The friendly smile vanished. He picked up the police report with shaking hands. "Harper, this is a very serious accusation. Your father called me himself to push this application through. He said you were too busy at work to come in." "My father lied to you," I said coldly. "If you do not freeze that account and lock those funds right now, I will bring my company's corporate lawyers in here, and we will sue this credit union for failing basic security protocols." Mr. Peterson swallowed hard. He turned to his computer and typed furiously. "The account is frozen. No money can go in or out." I stood up. "Thank you. Have a good weekend." I walked out of the bank. I knew exactly what was going to happen next. Vance had hired Lakeside Builders to do the kitchen remodel. The boxes were already in the hallway. In the construction business, the client always gives the contractor a 50% deposit check to start the work. Vance had met the foreman on Friday morning, the day after Thanksgiving, to hand him the deposit check for $32,500. Because of the weekend, the check would not start processing until Monday morning. Monday morning was also the exact time the contractors were scheduled to start destroying my parents' old kitchen. I could have called Lakeside Builders on Friday and warned them. I could have stopped the demolition before it even started. But I didn't. My family wanted a new, beautiful image for the world to see. They wanted to pretend they were rich and successful, even if they had to steal from me to do it. I decided I was going to let them see exactly what their lies really looked like. I spent the weekend in my apartment. I cleaned. I read a book. I drank coffee. I felt calm. The clock was ticking. Monday, November 30th, finally arrived. I went to work at the warehouse. At 8 a.m. I looked at the clock on my office wall. In my mind I could see the Lakeside Builders crew arriving at my parents' house. I could hear the loud, heavy sound of crowbars hitting the oak cabinets. I could see the dust flying into the air as they ripped out the sink and tore up the old floor tiles. By 10:30 a.m., my parents' kitchen would be nothing but bare wooden walls and exposed pipes. The heart of their perfect home would be completely gutted. At 11 a.m., the contractor's bank would finish processing the weekend checks. They would see that Vance's bank account was frozen by the fraud department. The $32,500 deposit check would bounce hard. At 11:42 a.m., my cell phone sitting on my desk started to ring. The caller ID flashed on the screen. It was my mother. I stared at the bright screen of my cell phone on my desk. It rang 3 times before I finally picked it up. "Hello, Mom," I said. My voice was calm, like still water. "Harper. Thank God." My mother's voice was high, tight, and completely panicked. I could hear the echo of her voice, which meant she was standing in a room with no furniture. "There is a massive mistake. You need to call the bank right now. Take a breath, Mom. What happened?" I asked, looking at my computer monitor. "It's Dave, the foreman from Lakeside Builders. He just told his whole crew to pack up their tools. They ripped out the sink, the oven, the cabinets. Everything is gone. The floor is just dirt and old wood." And then his phone rang, and he just stopped. He told me Vance's deposit check bounced. "He was so rude to me, Harper. He said they won't put a single screw back until they get $32,000 in cash." She was crying now. Not quiet tears, but the angry, confused tears of a woman who was used to the world being perfect. "I don't understand," she sobbed. "Vance is coming over, but he isn't picking up his phone. You know banking, Harper. You have to call Mr. Peterson and fix this. We can't live like this. The house is freezing. There is drywall dust everywhere." I closed my eyes. I could picture it perfectly. The fake, perfect image of our family was literally lying in broken pieces on the floor. "Mom," I said slowly, "I didn't bounce the check. I can't fix it. You need to ask Dad why the bank froze the money." "Your father? What does your father have to do with this? He is in the garage trying to calm down." "Ask him, Mom," I said, and then I hung up the phone. My heart was beating hard against my ribs. I felt a sudden wave of guilt wash over me. That was the programming of my childhood kicking in. Fix it, Harper. Make them happy, Harper. Don't cause trouble, Harper. I had to grip the edge of my desk so tightly my knuckles turned white just to stop myself from calling her back. 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. It was not my mother. It was my father. I answered it. "Hello, Dad. What did you do?" His voice was not loud. It was a low, dangerous whisper. It was the voice he used when I was a child and spilled milk on the good carpet. It was meant to make me feel very, very small. "I protected my identity, Dad," I said, holding the phone tight. "I went to the police. Officer Briggs at the downtown station. I gave them the loan documents with the forged signature." He let out a sharp, angry breath. "Are you out of your mind? You went to the cops? Over a family matter? You are trying to send your own brother to jail for a simple misunderstanding?" "It is not a misunderstanding, Dad. It is a $65,000 felony. We were going to make the monthly payments," he snapped, finally raising his voice. "Vance has a new business starting in January. The money was going to come right back. You wouldn't have even noticed the loan on your credit report. I made sure the address was set to our house so you wouldn't get the mail." I felt a cold pain in my chest. He wasn't sorry that he stole from me. He was only angry that he got caught. He truly believed he had done nothing wrong. "Why did you use my name, Dad?" I asked. My voice cracked just a little bit. "Why didn't you co-sign the loan for him?" "Because my debt-to-income ratio is too high on my pension," he yelled. "I couldn't get approved. Vance needed a win, Harper. He has been so depressed since his last company failed. He needed to feel like the man of the house. This kitchen was going to give him his confidence back. I am your father. I put a roof over your head for 18 years. I paid for your braces. You owe us this. You have no heart, Harper. You only care about your spreadsheets and your rules." A tear finally fell down my cheek, hot and stinging. It was the ultimate betrayal. He was justifying a crime by telling me I was a bad daughter. In his mind, keeping Vance happy was worth destroying my future. "The bank account is frozen, Dad," I said quietly. "The contractors are gone. I am not dropping the police report. Do not call me at work again." I ended the call and turned off my phone. I stood up and walked out of my office. I didn't want to sit in the quiet glass room anymore. I walked down the metal stairs to the main warehouse floor. It was huge, cold and loud. The sound of heavy diesel forklifts beeping, wooden pallets dropping, and workers shouting orders filled the air. I walked over to loading dock number 4 and stood in the cold wind blowing in from the open bay doors. I watched a forklift lift a 3-ton pallet of steel pipes like it weighed nothing. "You owe us this." My father's words played in my head like a broken radio. A memory hit me, sharp and sudden. I was 12 years old. It was a hot July afternoon. I was sitting on the front porch steps, reading a library book. My father was in the driveway, teaching 16-year-old Vance how to drive a used Honda Civic. Vance kept stalling the engine. He kept grinding the gears. Every time he failed, my father would laugh, pat him on the shoulder and say, "That's okay, buddy. We'll get it next time. You're doing great." I had straight A's in school. I never asked for a car. When I turned 16, I took the city bus to my part-time job at the grocery store. Nobody cheered for me. Nobody patted my shoulder. Because I didn't need help, they assumed I didn't need love. "Hey, you're freezing." I jumped. Sloane, my company's senior legal counsel, was standing next to me. She was holding out a white paper cup of hot tea. I took the cup. The heat warmed my shaking hands. "They called," I told her, keeping my eyes on the forklift. "The check bounced. The kitchen is destroyed. My dad said I have no heart." Sloane nodded slowly. She didn't offer a fake, polite smile. She just looked at me with those sharp, smart eyes. "Of course he said that. When a thief gets caught, the first thing they do is blame the lock for being too strong. They are going to push you, Harper. They are going to use every memory, every holiday, and every guilt trip they can find to make you drop those charges." "I feel sick," I whispered. "Good," Sloane said, drinking her own coffee. "That means you are a normal human being. But listen to me. Do not go to that house. Do not fix their mess. Let the cold air blow through that broken kitchen. Because right now that messy, broken room is exactly what their lies look like in the real world." She patted my arm and walked back toward the offices. I took a deep breath of the cold warehouse air. Sloane was right. The silence was over. The war had just begun, and the hardest part was not going to be the police or the bank. The hardest part was going to be the family secret that was about to crawl out of the wreckage. It was Tuesday evening, 2 days after the kitchen was destroyed. I was sitting in my small apartment in the Heritage Hill neighborhood. The heating vent was blowing warm air, making a soft humming sound. I was eating a bowl of plain soup for dinner. Suddenly there was a knock on my door. I looked through the small glass peephole. It was Aunt Clara. She was wearing her heavy winter coat and holding a blue plastic container. I opened the door slowly. "Hi, Harper," Aunt Clara said, giving me a sad, soft smile. "It is freezing outside. Can I come in?" "Sure, Aunt Clara," I said. I stepped back to let her inside. She walked into my kitchen and put the plastic container on the counter. She opened the lid. It was full of fresh, homemade snickerdoodle cookies. They smelled like sugar and cinnamon. "I baked these this afternoon," she said, taking off her gloves. "Your favorite." "I know you have been very stressed lately." I looked at the cookies. I did not feel hungry. In my mind, I remembered my training from work. When a bad supplier wants you to ignore a broken contract, they usually send you a gift first. They try to make you feel like a friend so you forget about the rules. "Thank you," I said quietly. "Why are you really here, Aunt Clara?" She sighed and leaned against the counter. She looked at me with big, worried eyes. "Harper, sweetie, your mother is a total mess. She has not stopped crying for 2 days. They are eating dinner on paper plates in the living room. The house is freezing because the wind comes right through the empty kitchen walls. Your dad looks like he has aged 10 years. Dad made his choices," I said flatly. Clara stepped closer to me and lowered her voice. "Families make mistakes, Harper. Your dad made a bad judgment call, but you do not call the police on your own blood. You are going to ruin Vance's life over some money. Just call the detective tomorrow. Tell him you gave your dad permission, and you just forgot. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Your uncle and I will even help pay the monthly loan bills." I stared at her. She knew the truth. She knew my father and brother committed a major crime against me. But to her, the crime was not the problem. The problem was that I did not stay quiet. She wanted me to lie to the police just so the family could go back to playing their fake happy roles. "Aunt Clara," I said, looking her directly in the eyes, "if one of my truck drivers steals a shipment of medical supplies, I do not give him cookies. I do not pretend it was a mistake. I call the police. Vance stole $65,000 from my future. Dad helped him. And you are asking me to go to jail for lying to a detective, just so Mom doesn't have to look at a broken kitchen." Clara's face turned hard. The soft, loving aunt disappeared. "You have always been so cold, Harper. You only care about yourself. Take your cookies, Aunt Clara," I said, pointing to the door. "And please do not come to my apartment again." She grabbed her plastic container, gave me an angry look, and walked out, slamming the door behind her. The next morning, I was back at the Nexus freight office. The sky outside was bright blue and very cold. I walked into Sloane's office. She was sitting at her large wooden desk, reading a stack of papers. "Good morning, Harper," Sloane said. "Sit down. I have something to show you." I sat in the leather chair across from her. Since your name is on the loan documents, you have a legal right to see the bank statements for the funds, Sloan explained. I called the legal department at Grand Rapids First Credit Union yesterday. I told them if they did not send me the transaction history of the frozen account, we would take them to court. They emailed the file this morning. Sloan turned her computer monitor toward me. It showed a simple list of numbers and dates. Look closely at the timeline, Sloan said, pointing with her pen. The bank funded the $65,000 loan on Friday, November 20th. That was 1 week before Thanksgiving. Look at the very first thing your brother did with the money. I read the screen. On November 20th, at 2:15 p.m., he initiated an ACH transfer for $28,500. Where did this go? I asked, my eyebrows pulling together. Lakeside Builders? No, Sloan said. Lakeside Builders got a check for $32,500 on Friday, which bounced. This first transfer went to a place called Palmer & Davis Legal Defense, but because an ACH transfer takes 3 business days to clear, your fraud report on Friday afternoon froze the account while the money was still in transit. The funds never reached the lawyer. I felt a cold chill run down my arms. A law firm? Why is Vance paying a law firm $28,000? Sloan leaned back in her chair. I have a friend who works as a clerk at the Kent County Courthouse. I asked him to search your brother's name in the public records. Harper, your brother's dog-walking business didn't just fail. He rented a commercial office space on Wealthy Street last year. When the business ran out of money, he didn't just leave. He got drunk, went to the office, and completely trashed the place. He broke windows, destroyed the plumbing, and ruined the floors. The landlord sued him for property damage. My mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. The judge ordered Vance to pay $28,500 in damages by December 1st, Sloan continued softly. If he did not pay, he was going to be charged with a felony and sent to county jail. Your father knew about this. They were desperate. I sat frozen in the chair. The pieces of the puzzle suddenly locked together in my mind. The $65,000 loan was never about buying my parents a new kitchen. It was rescue money. My father stole my identity to pay off Vance's secret legal settlement to keep his golden boy out of jail. But the sickest part of the whole story was the kitchen. After paying the lawyer $28,500, Vance still had about $36,000 left of my stolen money. Most normal people would have given the rest back, or hidden it. But not Vance. His ego was too big. He wanted to look like a hero. So, he hired the contractors and bought the custom oak cabinets with the leftover money. He destroyed his parents' perfectly good kitchen just so he could stand at the Thanksgiving table and brag about how rich and generous he was. He used my stolen money to save himself from jail, and then used the rest of it to buy applause from my parents. My God, I whispered, pressing my hands against my face. It was all a giant show. Yes, Sloan said gently. Your father was willing to let you take on $65,000 of debt just to hide his son's crimes from the neighborhood. I dropped my hands. I looked at the bank statement on the screen. The sadness was completely gone now. It was replaced by a sharp, clear focus. My family had buried a massive secret to protect their fake image. Now I was going to dig it up and show it to everyone. Thursday, December 3rd. The temperature dropped to 19 degrees. Snow started falling over Grand Rapids, covering the dirty streets in a thin white blanket. I finished my shift at Nexus Freight at 5:15 p.m. I packed my laptop into my bag, zipped up my heavy black winter coat, and walked out to the employee parking lot. The cold wind burned my cheeks. I pressed the button on my car keys, and my headlights flashed in the dark. As I walked closer to my car, I saw a figure standing next to the driver's side door. It was my mother. She was wearing her thin brown wool coat. She did not have a hat or gloves on. Her shoulders were shaking from the cold. She looked small and very old. "Mom?" I asked, stopping a few feet away. "What are you doing here? It is freezing. How did you even get here?" "Your dad dropped me off," she said. Her voice was cracked and weak. She wrapped her arms around herself. "He is parked across the street. Harper, please, you have to listen to me." I did not unlock the car. I stood still in the snow. What happened? Tears started rolling down her red cheeks. "The police came to the house yesterday afternoon. Officer Briggs and another detective. They arrested Vance. They put him in handcuffs right on our front lawn. The neighbors saw everything." I felt a sudden drop in my stomach, but I kept my face completely blank. When I reported the fraud, the bank froze the account. That meant the bank's fraud department pulled the $28,500 SEH transfer back from the lawyer's office. Vance's stolen money never cleared. He missed his December 1st court deadline to pay for the property damage. "He missed his court payment," I said quietly. My mother sniffled, wiping her nose with the back of her cold hand. His lawyer called us. Because the bank reversed the money, the judge issued a warrant. They are charging him with felony destruction of property, and Detective Briggs is adding the bank fraud charges on top of it. They set his bond at a strict $10,000 cash minimum, Harper. The judge wouldn't let us use a bail bondsman because he missed his first court date. We don't have $10,000 in cash. He slept in a county jail cell last night. She stepped forward and tried to grab my arm. I stepped back. Harper, you have to call the detective, she begged, her voice rising in panic. Tell them it was a big misunderstanding. Tell the bank you gave Dad permission to use your name. If you accept the loan, the fraud charges go away, and we can use the rest of the money to bail him out. I stared at her. The snow was falling in her hair. You knew, I whispered. The realization hit me like a physical punch to the chest. At Thanksgiving dinner, when Vance was bragging about buying you a new kitchen, you already knew about the property damage. You knew he was going to jail. My mother looked down at the snowy ground. She could not look me in the eyes. We had to protect him, Harper. You don't understand because you don't have children. He was drunk when he ruined that office. He made a mistake. We couldn't let our boy go to a dirty jail cell. It would ruin his whole life. So you decided to ruin my life instead? I asked. My voice was not angry. It was just incredibly sad. You let him steal my identity. You let Dad forge my name. And then you sat at the dinner table and clapped for him while he used my stolen money to buy you custom oak cabinets. You have a great job, she cried out, finally looking up at me with angry eyes. You make so much money at this company. You could have just paid the monthly bills for the loan. It is only money, Harper. He is your brother. There it was, the absolute ugly truth. To my mother, my hard work, my credit, and my future were just tools to fix Vance's mistakes. She did not see me as a daughter. She saw me as a bank account. She believed I deserved to pay for his crimes simply because I was responsible and he was not. It is not just money, Mom, I said softly. It is my life, and I am not giving it to him. Please, she sobbed, holding her hands together like she was praying. He is so scared in there. He is crying. Then he should have thought about that before he picked up a pen and signed my name, I said. I pressed the unlock button on my keys. I opened my car door. Harper, she screamed, her voice echoing in the empty parking lot. If you drive away, you are no longer part of this family. We will never forgive you. I paused. I looked at her one last time. I know, I said. I got into my car, closed the door and locked it. I turned on the engine and drove out of the parking lot. I watched my mother shrinking in my rearview mirror until she disappeared into the falling snow. I drove back to my dark, quiet apartment. I did not cry. The pain was gone. The only thing left inside me was a solid, unbreakable steel core. They had officially kicked me out of the family. I was exiled. But for the first time in my 32 years of life, I felt completely free. Now, it was time to rebuild. And it was time to prepare for the final crash. The first 2 weeks of December were completely silent. My phone did not ring. My mother did not text me. My father did not send emails. I was completely cut off. In the supply chain business, we call this a dead zone. It is what happens when a cargo ship loses its GPS signal in the middle of the ocean. Nobody knows where you are, and nobody reaches out. You just float in the dark. Living in that silence was the hardest thing I have ever done. When you spend 32 years trying to make people happy, the sudden quiet feels like you are suffocating. I would wake up at 3 a.m. in my dark apartment, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was the bad person. I wondered if I should just call the bank, take the $65,000 debt, and buy my family back. But then I would look at my clean kitchen. I would look at my peaceful living room, and I realized something very important. I did not miss them. I just missed the idea of them. I missed the family I pretended we were, not the family we actually were. I put all my energy into my work at Nexus Freight. I worked 10-hour days. I organized shipping routes, negotiated fuel prices, and drank way too much black coffee. Work was safe. Math does not lie to you. Spreadsheets do not forge your name. On Wednesday, December 16th, I was sitting in the company cafeteria eating a turkey sandwich. Sloane sat down across from me. She placed a yellow legal pad on the table. I have been doing some digging, Sloane said, taking a sip of her water. I couldn't stop thinking about your father's bank, Grand Rapids First Credit Union. I put my sandwich down. What about it? It bothered me, Sloane explained, leaning closer so the other employees could not hear. Mr. Peterson is the branch manager. He knows the banking laws. Why would he risk his entire career to push a $65,000 loan through without verifying your identity in person? Even for an old friend, that is a huge risk. Dad said he just pulled some strings, I replied. Sloane shook her head. No. People only break the law like that when they are scared of something worse. So, I called an old friend who works at the state banking regulation office. I asked her to quietly look into Richard's retirement in 2021. I wiped my mouth with a napkin. Dad retired because he had high blood pressure. He wanted to play golf. Sloane looked at me with sad, serious eyes. Harper, your father was fired. The cafeteria noise seemed to fade away. What? In 2021, the bank did an internal audit, Sloane said smoothly, reading from her yellow pad. Your father was approving bad personal loans for his country club friends, men who didn't have the income to pay the money back. Mr. Peterson was his direct supervisor. Peterson signed off on those bad files to make the branch's quarterly numbers look better. When the auditors caught it, Peterson panicked. To save his own job, he forced your father to take an early retirement and quietly buried the bad loans so the federal regulators wouldn't find out. I stared at her. My chest felt tight. So, Peterson owed my dad. Exactly, Sloane nodded. Your father knew Peterson's dirty secret. If your father went public, Peterson would lose his job and go to federal prison. So, when your dad called Peterson and told him to approve Vance's loan without your real signature, Peterson had no choice. He was being blackmailed. I felt a cold wave wash over my brain. The fake, respectable image of my father shattered completely. He wasn't just a man who made a bad choice to help his son. He was a manipulator. He used his own dark past to force a bank manager to steal his daughter's future. This is the real secret, Harper, Sloane said softly. This is why your whole family is terrified of the police looking too closely. If Officer Briggs digs into that loan, he won't just find Vance's forgery. He will find your father's blackmail and Peterson's bank fraud. The whole house of cards will come down. I took a deep breath. The pieces were all on the table now. I knew the truth, all of it. 3 days later, on Saturday, December 19th, I walked down to the lobby of my apartment building to check my mail. Inside my small metal box was a thick, cream-colored envelope. The handwriting on the front was Aunt Clara's. I went back up to my apartment, sat on the couch, and opened the envelope. Inside was a beautiful gold-embossed invitation to Aunt Clara and Uncle Thomas's annual Christmas Eve dinner. They hosted it every year at their huge house in East Grand Rapids. The whole extended family would be there. Cousins, grandparents, everyone. A piece of plain-lined paper fell out of the invitation. It was a handwritten note from Clara. Harper, Uncle Thomas paid the $10,000 bail. Vance is out of jail and sleeping on your parents' couch. He is very depressed. Your mother's heart is breaking. We are a Christian family, Harper. We forgive each other. We want you to come to Christmas Eve dinner. We will have a seat saved for you. Please bring the police withdrawal form. You can sign it in front of the family, and we can all move past this ugly chapter. Do not ruin Christmas for your mother. Love, Aunt Clara. I read the note 3 times. In the real world, toxic families do not lock you in a basement. They lock you in a cage of guilt. Aunt Clara genuinely believed she was doing the right thing. She thought that if she put me in a room with 30 family members, the peer pressure would crush me. She thought I would be too embarrassed to say no in front of everyone. She wanted me to smile, eat ham, and sign my life away so they could go back to pretending they were perfect. I looked at the shiny gold invitation. In the past, I would have cried. I would have felt guilty. I would have gone to the dinner, kept my head down, and signed the paper just to make my mother smile again. But I was not the scapegoat anymore. I was the supply chain director. I knew how to deliver a heavy load. They wanted me to come to dinner. They wanted a family gathering. They wanted to use the audience to force my hand. I stood up and walked over to my desk. I opened my briefcase and pulled out the brown folder. I added Sloane's notes about my father's real banking history. I added the bounced check records. I organized everything with neat, clear plastic tabs. I was going to go to Aunt Clara's Christmas Eve dinner, but I was not bringing a withdrawal form. I was bringing the truth, and I was going to serve it to the entire family. December 24th, Christmas Eve. The streets of East Grand Rapids were lined with huge, expensive houses covered in thousands of bright, twinkling Christmas lights. It looked like a perfect holiday movie. I pulled my car into Aunt Clara and Uncle Thomas's long driveway. There were at least 15 cars parked ahead of me. The whole extended family was here. Grandparents, cousins, aunts, and uncles. I turned off the engine. I was wearing a sharp dark blue suit. My hair was pulled back perfectly straight. I did not look like the quiet, invisible daughter anymore. I looked like the director of supply chain for Nexus Freight. I grabbed my thick brown folder from the passenger seat, took a deep breath of the freezing air, and walked up to the heavy wooden front door. I rang the doorbell. Aunt Clara opened the door. She was wearing a sparkling red dress and a big pearl necklace. When she saw me, her face lit up with a huge relieved smile. She pulled me into a tight hug. She smelled like expensive perfume and roasted ham. "Oh, Harper, sweetie, you came," she whispered loudly in my ear. She pulled back and looked at the brown folder in my hands. "You brought the police withdrawal form, right? Oh, your mother is going to be so happy. Come in, come in." I did not answer her. I just walked inside. The house was incredibly warm. Christmas carols were playing softly from hidden speakers. The living room was packed with people holding crystal glasses of wine and laughing. It looked like the absolute picture of a happy American family. Then, I saw them. My mother was sitting on the edge of the large white sofa. Next to her was Vance. He did not look like the confident, bragging man from Thanksgiving. He looked thin, pale, and pathetic. He was wearing an old gray sweater. My mother was holding a small plate of cheese and crackers, literally handing them to him like he was a sick child. Across the room, standing near the warm fireplace, was my father. He was holding a glass of brown scotch, laughing loudly at a joke Uncle Thomas just told. He was wearing a fresh suit. He was playing his role perfectly. The respectable, strong father. You would never guess he had just forced a bank manager to break the law. My father saw me. His laugh stopped. He gave me a slow, serious nod, like a king welcoming a peasant. "Harper is here," Uncle Thomas announced loudly. The room got a little quieter. Several cousins turned to look at me. They all gave me soft, pitying smiles. I realized right then what my parents had told the extended family. They had spun the story. They made me look like the confused, angry sister, and Vance look like the poor victim of my bad temper. "Dinner is ready," Aunt Clara called out from the dining room. "Everyone, find your seats." The dining room table was massive, made of dark mahogany wood. It sat 20 people. Aunt Clara had arranged name cards at every seat. She placed my parents at the center of the table. She placed Vance right next to my mother, and she placed me directly across from Vance. It was a trap. A carefully designed psychological trap. If I sat there, 20 pairs of eyes would be watching my every move. They wanted me surrounded. I walked to my chair and sat down. I placed the brown folder flat on the table, right next to my water glass. Platters of sliced ham, roasted potatoes, and green beans were passed around the table. People were talking, laughing, and passing the butter. But the air around the center of the table felt thick and heavy. Vance kept his eyes completely glued to his empty plate. My mother kept looking nervously at my brown folder. Before anyone started eating, Uncle Thomas tapped his fork against his wine glass. Clink, clink, clink. The room went completely silent. "Before we enjoy this beautiful meal," Uncle Thomas said, standing up at the head of the table, "I want to say a few words. This year has been wonderful, but it has also brought some challenges to our family. Mistakes were made, feelings were hurt, but tonight is the night before Christmas. Tonight is about grace. It is about understanding that blood is thicker than anything else in this world." Aunt Clara smiled and nodded, placing her hand over her heart. Several cousins murmured in agreement. Uncle Thomas looked directly at me. His voice was deep and commanding. "We all know Harper has been very upset with her brother. But she is here tonight because she understands that family comes first. She brought the paperwork to fix this misunderstanding. Richard, why don't you lead us in a toast to forgiveness?" Uncle Thomas sat down. My father stood up. He held his glass of scotch high. He looked down at me, his eyes full of pressure and expectation. He was using the crowd to force me to surrender. "To family," my father said smoothly. "We are not perfect, but we always take care of our own. Harper, honey, why don't you slide that form over to Vance? Let's put this ugly business behind us and eat." Every single person at the table turned their head to look at me. The silence was absolute. You could hear the crackle of the wood burning in the fireplace in the next room. My mother reached her hand out across the table toward me. "Please, Harper," she whispered. Her eyes were begging me. "Please just sign it. Give your brother his life back." I sat perfectly still. I did not reach for my pen. I did not touch my food. I looked at Vance. He finally lifted his head and looked at me. His eyes were red, but there was a tiny hidden smirk resting right at the corner of his mouth. He thought he had won. He thought the peer pressure had broken me. In the supply chain business, when you find a broken link, you do not paint over it. You cut it out, and you show management exactly why the system failed. "I didn't bring a withdrawal form, Dad," I said. My voice was not loud, but it cut through the quiet room like a knife. My father's arm slowly dropped. His smile vanished. "What did you say?" "I didn't bring the withdrawal form," I repeated clearly, looking right into his angry eyes. "I brought the bank records." I placed my hand on top of the brown folder. I flipped it open. Aunt Clara gasped. "Harper, what are you doing? This is a family dinner." "Yes, it is, Aunt Clara," I said, keeping my voice completely calm and smooth. And since the whole family is sitting right here, judging me, I think the whole family deserves to know exactly what they are forgiving. I pulled out the first piece of paper. It was the public court record Sloan had found for me. Vance didn't just make a mistake, I said, looking at Uncle Thomas. Vance got drunk and destroyed his rented office space on Wealthy Street. A judge ordered him to pay $28,000 by December 1st, or he was going to county jail for a felony. Murmurs broke out across the table. Two of my cousins looked at Vance in pure shock. "That is a lie," my mother shouted, her face turning bright red. "Don't listen to her. She is just trying to ruin him." "It is a public court document, Mom," I said flatly, sliding the paper to the middle of the table. "Anyone can read it." I pulled out the second piece of paper, the bank transfer statement. "Dad," I said, turning my eyes to my father. He was gripping the back of his chair so tightly his knuckles were white. "You couldn't let your golden boy go to jail, but you didn't have the money. So, you stole my social security number. You forged my signature. You took out a $65,000 loan in my name, and you immediately wired $28,000 to Vance's defense lawyer." "Stop it right now," my father roared. His respectable mask completely melted away. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "You have no idea what you are talking about. I am your father. I am the supply chain director for Nexus Freight, Dad," I said coldly. "My entire job is tracking where money goes, and I tracked it. I tracked every single penny." I pulled out the final piece of paper, the internal bank audit file about Mr. Peterson. "The only question I had," I continued, speaking to the completely shocked room, "was how Dad got the bank to approve a massive loan without me being there in person." I looked my father right in the eyes. I watched the color completely drain out of his face. "But then I found out why you actually retired in 2021, Dad," I said softly. The room was so quiet, nobody was even breathing. The bomb was sitting right on the table, and my hand was resting on the button. The silence in the dining room was so heavy it felt like it was going to crush the mahogany table. The only sound was the soft, happy Christmas music playing from the hidden speakers and the crackle of the burning wood in the fireplace. My father's face turned the color of wet ash. The strong, confident posture he always carried completely collapsed. He took a slow step backward, his back hitting the wall. I looked around the table. Everyone was frozen. I picked up the final piece of paper from my brown folder. It was the internal audit report Sloan had found. "You didn't retire because of your blood pressure, Dad," I said. My voice was calm, steady, and very clear. "In the fall of 2021, the auditors at Grand Rapids First Credit Union caught you approving bad personal loans for your friends at the Oak Haven Country Club. Men who did not have the money to pay the bank back." Aunt Clara put her hand over her mouth. Her eyes were wide with shock. "Mr. Peterson was your supervisor," I continued, keeping my eyes locked on my father. "He signed off on your bad loans to make the branch's quarterly numbers look better. When the auditors found out, Mr. Peterson panicked. To save his own job, he forced you to take an early retirement, and he quietly buried the files so the federal regulators wouldn't put you both in prison." "Richard," Uncle Thomas said. His deep voice was shaking. "Is this true?" My father did not look at Uncle Thomas. He glared at me with pure, burning hatred. "Where did you get that paper, Harper? That is private bank property." "I am the supply chain director," I reminded him simply. "I find things that go missing." I turned to look at Aunt Clara and Uncle Thomas. They were the ultimate enablers. They had spent their whole lives ignoring my parents' bad behavior, to keep the family looking perfect. But now, the facts were right in front of them. When Vance was about to go to jail for destroying that commercial property, I explained to the room. Dad knew he couldn't get a loan himself, so he blackmailed Mr. Peterson. He told the bank manager to approve a fraudulent $65,000 loan using my social security number, without my physical signature. If Mr. Peterson refused, Dad was going to expose the 2021 cover-up to the police. The room erupted into chaos. Whispers, gasps, and nervous shifting filled the space. My cousin Merritt put his wine glass down on the table and actually took a step away from Vance. "I did what I had to do," my father suddenly roared, his voice booming over the whispers. He pointed a shaking finger at me. He was no longer trying to hide. He was trying to justify his crime. "The credit union has insurance. They have billions of dollars. Nobody was getting hurt. I was saving my son from having his life ruined over one stupid mistake." "I was getting hurt, Dad," I said, my voice rising just enough to cut through his yelling. "You strapped $65,000 of debt to my name. You ruined my credit score. You threw me under the bus. You have a great job," my mother cried out from the sofa, her face covered in tears. She stood up, holding her hands out to me. We gave you life, Harper. We fed you. We clothed you. Is this how you repay us, by tearing us apart on Christmas Eve? She still didn't get it. She still thought I owed them my future just because I was born. Suddenly, Uncle Thomas slammed his heavy hand down on the dining table. The crystal glasses rattled. "Quiet," Uncle Thomas yelled. He turned to look at my father. The polite, friendly uncle was completely gone. He was a retired real estate appraiser, a man who lived his life by strict financial rules. And he had just realized he had been played. "Richard," Uncle Thomas said, his voice dangerously low, "you came to my house 3 days ago. You looked me in the eyes and told me the police report was just a silly misunderstanding. You told me Harper was just confused about a co-signing agreement." My father swallowed hard. "Thomas, listen, did you forge her name to cover up a felony, Richard?" Uncle Thomas demanded. My father looked at the floor and said nothing. Uncle Thomas's face turned bright red. "I wired a $10,000 cashier's check to the Kent County Courthouse to bail Vance out. I thought I was helping a boy who made a minor mistake. I didn't know I was funding a federal bank fraud cover-up. Toxic families only stay together when the secrets are hidden. The moment the secret involves someone else's money, the loyalty disappears." Uncle Thomas wasn't just disappointed. He was furious that his own money was now tied to a crime. Vance suddenly jumped up from the sofa. He looked panicked. "Uncle Thomas, I swear I was going to pay you back. I have a massive investor meeting in January with Caldwell Tech Ventures. I am going to get funding." I looked at Vance. The sad, pathetic act was dropping. "You used $28,000 to pay your lawyer and stay out of jail, Vance," I said coldly. "But you borrowed $65,000. What about the other $36,000? Vance froze. He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. I looked at the rest of the family. He could have just taken the money he needed to stay out of jail. He could have secretly paid the rest back to the bank. But Vance's ego is too big. He couldn't just be a criminal. He had to be a hero. So, he took the rest of my stolen money, hired lakeside builders, and destroyed Mom and Dad's kitchen so he could buy them a new one. He used my money to buy their love, and he sat at Thanksgiving dinner bragging about it while I ate turkey. Aunt Clara started to cry. Real, ugly tears. The perfect image of her family was dead, bleeding out right on her expensive dining room rug. My father walked toward me. He puffed out his chest, trying to use his physical size to intimidate me, the same way he did when I was a child. "Get out," he hissed, his face inches from mine. "Get out of this house, Harper. You are dead to us." I did not shrink. I did not look away. I looked right back into his angry, terrified eyes. "This is not your house, Dad," I said quietly. "This is Aunt Clara's house, but don't worry, I am leaving." I calmly closed my brown folder. I picked it up, turned around, and started walking toward the front door. Behind me, the explosion finally happened. Uncle Thomas started screaming at my father about his $10,000. Aunt Clara was yelling at my mother for bringing this mess into her home. Vance was shouting that everyone was against him. The enablers were no longer silent. They were tearing each other apart. I opened the heavy wooden front door and stepped out into the freezing Christmas Eve night. The cold air hit my face, clean and sharp. I walked down the driveway to my car. I didn't look back at the brightly lit house. I didn't need to. The toxic equilibrium was broken forever, and I was finally free. March 12, 2027. The thick winter snow in Grand Rapids was finally melting into dark, muddy puddles. The air was starting to smell like wet dirt and fresh spring rain. It had been 3 months since the Christmas Eve dinner, 3 months of total silence. But this time, the silence was not a punishment, it was peace. The legal system moves very slowly, but it crushes everything in its path. After Christmas, Uncle Thomas did exactly what I knew he would do. To protect his own clean reputation and to try and get his $10,000 back, he went directly to Detective Briggs and gave the police every single detail. The federal banking regulators moved in immediately. The Grand Rapids First Credit Union fired Mr. Peterson. To save himself from a long federal prison sentence, Peterson made a plea deal. He handed over all the records of my father's blackmail, the 2021 cover-up, and the forged loan. My father was officially charged with felony wire fraud. Because he was 68 years old, the judge gave him 5 years of strict probation instead of federal prison. But the state banking board stripped away a huge part of his retirement pension. To pay the massive legal fees and the bank fines, my parents had to put my childhood home up for sale. Vance was not so lucky. His bail was revoked. He was sentenced to 18 months in the Kent County Correctional Facility. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon, I was sitting in a warm, quiet booth at a local coffee shop. I was drinking a hot vanilla latte. Sloan was sitting across from me, smiling. We were celebrating. Nexus Freight had just promoted me to vice president of logistics. Suddenly, my cell phone buzzed on the wooden table. It was a text message from an unsaved number. I picked up the phone. I opened the message. It was a long block of text. Harper, it is Dad. I had to buy a cheap prepaid phone. We officially sold the house this morning. The new buyers are going to tear it down. We are moving into a small rented apartment near the highway. Mom is packing the last boxes right now. The kitchen is still just bare wood and dirt. I am sitting in the empty driveway in my car. I have a lot of time to think these days. I was so arrogant, Harper. I thought I was protecting our family, but I was just protecting my own fake pride. I destroyed the only daughter who actually took care of us. I am so sorry. I know I do not deserve it, but I hope one day you can forgive a very foolish, broken old man. I stared at the glowing screen for a long time. The coffee shop around me felt very quiet. 5 years ago, a message like this would have made me cry. I would have driven straight to the house, hugged him, and given him money to help pay for his new apartment. But as I read the words, I just felt a dull, quiet ache in my chest. It was the grief of mourning people who were still alive. My father finally realized his mistakes. He hit absolute rock bottom, and the cold reality of his actions finally broke through his thick ego. The apology was real, but an apology does not rebuild a burned bridge. It just cleans up the ashes. I did forgive him in my heart. I did not want him to carry that heavy guilt forever. But forgiveness does not mean I have to open my front door to him ever again. You can forgive a thief, but you do not give them the keys to your house. I learned a very hard lesson this year. Blood just means you are related. It is just biology. It does not automatically mean you are a real family. Real family is built on loyalty, trust, and protecting each other when things get dark. I looked across the small wooden table at Sloan. She was busy typing a work email on her phone, her glasses sliding slightly down her nose. She never asked me for money. She never asked me to shrink myself down so she could feel bigger. When my whole world was falling apart, she just handed me a cup of hot tea and stood right beside me in the freezing warehouse. "Sloan," I said softly. She looked up from her phone, pushing her glasses back up. "Yes, Madam Vice President." I smiled at the new title. I was thinking about hosting a small dinner party next weekend at my apartment. Nothing fancy. Just some good roasted chicken, maybe some music. I would really love it if you came. Sloane's eyes softened. A warm, genuine smile spread across her face. "I would be honored, Harper. What can I bring?" "Just bring yourself," I replied. I turned my head and looked back out the window at the busy city. People were walking under umbrellas, rushing to get to their jobs and their homes. The world was moving forward, and for the first time in my life, I was moving forward with it. I was no longer the quiet rock for other people to step on. I was not the silent scapegoat. I was Harper. I had built a new life with my own 2 hands, with people who actually loved me for exactly who I was. The long storm was finally over. My phone was silent, my credit was safe, and my future belonged only to me. IWS free. Have you ever had to cut off someone you loved to save yourself? Let me know in the comments, and make sure to subscribe if you want to hear what happened when they finally realized I wasn't coming back.